Gentlemen, I'm Scott Paulson, your host of Ethertale Radio Theater. Here we are again at wsradio.com in an air-conditioned radio station during this heat wave. How delightful. And today's theme is literary genres. And right off the bat, my good friend Amber Gallant is here, and we're going to talk about fabulism, which is a new genre I wasn't familiar with. And, of course, Amber Gallant. Oh, say hello to the folks at home, Amber Gallant.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me.
And that's the sound check for the day, for the not ready for airtime players. And my first question for you, Miss Amber Gallant, is what is fabulism?
Well, that's a little hard to pin down in such a new genre. This first definition I culled from none other than Wiktionary. Fabulism is a form of magical realism in which fantastical elements are placed into an everyday setting. And just to round that out, it's often interchangeable with magical realism, a genre wherein fantasy elements are culled from myths, allegories, and fables. Fables as in fabulism.
There it is. There's the root.
Mm-hmm. And those elements create something new from the tired old fairy tales of our past.
And you have a very favorite definition that you share with me just before airtime. What is that?
I do. This is my favorite definition. It's rife with feeling, and it comes from an essay on electricliterature.com from Amber Sparks. Fabulism feels like the kind of dream in which you look down and realize that reality has forgotten its pants.
Well, that explains everything.
Doesn't it, though? Of course, you know my own personal view as well. I think that the fact of the everyday setting of the character has more to do with the perception of that character and the way that they view the world around them.
And we were talking earlier in fantasy, not fabulism, but in fantasy, they or the characters closest, they would view the constructed world as completely normal, a fact of life, like Frodo from the Lord of Rings. Every day is a everyday regular day. And so, the everyday world we live in would be fantastical to Frodo, even as his world is fantastic to the reader. But getting back to fabulism, though?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that fabulism, as well as juxtaposing the real and unreal rather than in fantasy where this microcosm is created into itself and has its own rules and systems, fabulism makes it a goal to create fantastic expectations from the quotidian. And the character through which we as readers view the very realistic world, with the elements of strangeness that are included in many fabulous works, might be adjusted to it, but the reader is brought around to viewing them. A really great example of that is the likeness of the character Bird to Snow White in a fabulous book called Boy Snowbird by Helen Oyemi, which is a retelling of Snow White with racially charged tensions. And that happens in a very roundabout and often very literary way that makes the reader do a double take. So for me, really, it's all about the mindset the author convinces you to take and how far the reader is willing to go with them, although that's just the opinion of a literature major.
And yes, we're talking about fabulism, which is a new literary genre that Amber's been explaining to us. And now, what about the characters in a novel that's fabulous? What are they like?
Great question. Well, they seem to disavow the magical in their world, which helps the reader disavow it as well and to perceive the magical as boring and everyday, since we as readers are exploring the world through the character's perspective. Often I find that they both or either intentionally or unintentionally pull on the one magical thread in the world of the story, and that leads to the climax of the story and the resolution, if any is to be had, which kind of turns the magic into an agent of the plot.
Now, when you first were talking about fabulism, I'm such a fan of fab that I thought it was through the word fabulous, but it's really, I guess, more fable. Now, who coined the term fabulism? Miss Amber Gallant, tell me, who coined it, and when do you think it came into existence? Like, when did you first notice it, actually, too?
Well, I think the question of when it came into existence is even harder to pin down than when it became a genre. It arose out of several older terms, just like it arose out of several older literary genres. And I'd like to take a minute to talk about those genres first to pin both the definition and the existence of the name down.
Then you must.
We should start, of course, with Gabriel Garcia Marquez and the quintessential work of magical realism, 100 Years of Solitude.
And this isn't fabulism yet.
Nope. This is magical or marvelous realism. We'll be getting to that. And so the existence of the fantasy elements in the real world provides the basis for magical realism. Writers like Marquez don't invent new worlds, but reveal the magical in reality. And it makes sense because he really does work magic with the unadulterated realism created by the solitude, quotations, of the title. But he also makes the realistic attractive and the magical spiritual and ordinary, which is one main attribute of fabulism that we've talked about before.
Oh, we're slowly getting there, seeing some beginnings.
Yeah. It seems that there was already a way to describe the genre that Garcia Marquez inhabited because the term magical realism was introduced in 1925 by Franz Roh, who was a German art critic. And he coined this to create an art category that strayed from the strict form of realism and expressionism. And that was the name of the book in which he described it. After expressionism, he really just wanted to find something to describe the postmodernism, which rings true for me today. We're always trying to find new terms to describe the postmodern movements.
And especially critics. That I guess that's their job too, is to analyze things and just comment on where things are going.
Yeah, he did. He tried to comment on where things were going. That's what the entire book was about. And he was referring to paintings where real forms are combined in a way that don't conform to daily reality, like Chagall with his upside-down flying cows, or Dali with his melting clocks, things that seem commonplace to us now, but imagine how they must have felt in 1925. Yeah.
And the visual art world and the literary world, they don't always share terminology, but they ended up sharing terminology, certainly here.
Yeah, they did. It was kind of co-opted, but also Roh's very strict definition was rejected and used to refer to the artistic movement that we know today in literature in the 1940s. It was rejected by a Cuban essayist named Alejo Carpentier, who was really critical of Roh's definition because he thought it was a little too strict, a little too stringent. And he renamed it Lo Real Maravilloso, or marvelous realism. And by that he meant certain things that have occurred in the Americas, certain characteristics of its landscape, and certain elements that had nourished his, Carpentier's, work.
And so this is an example of the geographic playing a huge role. And we were talking earlier, and marvelous realism as a term didn't quite catch on, but the way to refer to the genre did. It's hard to trace these things when these terms are coined and what they mean.
It really is, but I think we're getting a little bit closer. Personally, I think, and we've talked about this too, that fabulism refers to fabulation, even though it seems like everyone's got their own timeline for when it emerged and who coined it.
I have to admit, I don't know what fabulation is.
Would you like to?
Yes.
Well, I found that the word fabulation was coined by an American named Robert Scholes, an American literary theorist in 1967. I couldn't find his original book. It went out of print, but UCSD does have a copy at the annex, which I couldn't get to before this show, but you should check out UCSD's catalog. That's a shameless plug for the library.
Yes. And when that book comes in for us, we'll meet again and talk more.
It will only take 2 to 4 working days.
Excellent.
Mm-hmm. So maybe the term came from here. We can shorten fabulations to fabulous, which is what we call writers of fabulism. So maybe fabulism at some point just became easier to pronounce, and it's one of those.
So yeah, fabulations to fabulists.
Fabulations to fabulists. Okay. One of those fake etymological tracings.
And then more lately it's fabulist, I think.
Yes, yeah. I think so. So now it seems that the term is being applied retroactively to works of fiction we'd call postmodernism, otherwise, like Kafka's The Metamorphosis.
Yes, because if you wake up and you're a cockroach, that's, I don't know. Apparently that's fabulous.
and your reality definitely starts to seem attractive to you. The one from before you were a giant cockroach, of course.
So now, moving along, what are some examples of fabulism in literature this time? We've talked about some that are being co-opted, but right now as we speak, what are some examples of fabulism?
Right now, I love modern fabulism. One of my favorite writers and a great modern example to keep on the track of fabulism being a blend of magical realism and literary fiction, in which the writing matters above all else, but we can debate that as a genre later, is Helen Oyemi. I've talked about Boy Snow Bird a little bit. She's also written Mr. Fox, in which the muse of a writer comes to life, and what is not yours is not yours. That's a collection of short stories in which the idea of keys is essential, and that's also where I got the idea of characters pulling on these threads to bring the story to completion. I think she's one of the best, especially since Boy Snow Bird does take the tale of Snow White and weave in issues of class, racism, and the family dynamics that occur in the story. She really shows that the literary nature of fabulism can skillfully maneuver myth and fable and incorporate contemporary concerns. Her first novel was The Icarus Girl, which she wrote when she was only 19. And it plays with the concept of doppelgangers. But then there's other modern writers who deserve just as much attention. There's Poor Krista Kakpour, who wrote The Last Illusion.
Oh, bless you. Oh, I thought you sneezed. I'm so sorry.
There's Karen Russell, who I think she was my introduction to fabulism and still one of my favorite writers. She wrote Vampires in the Lemon Grove and St. Lucy's Home for Girls Raised by Wolves. Her work is also what I think of when I think about a character in fabulism pulling on a thread that unravels the story or brings it to completion. And
I gotta learn that name of that author from Last Illusion in case I'm ever on Jeopardy. So it's Poro Krista Kakpour. Okay.
I believe so.
But I have to say it in form of a question if I'm ever on that show. So when we were talking about this topic of fabulism, and I was having trouble figuring out what it was, I asked you, what some examples of the medium might be, and I asked you, maybe Pushing Daisies.
Oh, yeah.
That was that called Pushing Daisies or Pushing Up Daisies? I can't remember, but one of the two titles, and I loved that show. Too. And I think that show was fabulism, right?
I think so too. I mean, that's my all-time favorite TV show, really.
And it's super colorful and very geographically distinct, and Ned's past is far removed from his present, and so hard to see exactly where the boarding school is in the show, and it's locations come and go, appearing and disappearing, and the stories. It was a great show to watch, and the writers really conjured up so much each episode, and yet everything was so different, but the characters accepted it. Just didn't throw them for a loop, and that's how I was able to wrap my head around fabulism. Was when you said to me that yes, Pushing Daisies would work as an example of fabulism. But how about comic books? Are there examples of some comic books that are maybe fabulous?
I haven't found any yet, but maybe that's because the fantastic element of comic books is constantly revisited as being outlandish and extraordinary. I mean, Spider-Man's ability to spin webs and swing from buildings is constantly not called into question, but painted against the backdrop of everyday life.
And we also tried to, when we were trying to get me to understand what it was, these co-opted books from the past that might be fabulous. How about these potentially older fabulists? Who are they?
Sure. Well, we talked about Kafka. I'd add Isaac Denison to that list, although I can't really speak about his work too much. But then, of course, the Latin American boom writers as precursors to the genre in magical realism. So Jorge Luis Borges. I don't remember the name of his story, but the one with the labyrinth. See, I wrote a paper in Spanish on it, but I can't express it in English.
Well, sometime we'll do the Ricas en Español. Now, for me, too, when we were trying to get me to figure out what fabulism was, we spent a lot of time talking about what isn't fabulism. So tell me, Amber Gallant, what isn't fabulism, just to get my head wrapped around it?
Isn't fabulism? Well, I'm going to go back to the Lord of the Rings example, since many people know Lord of the Rings. What isn't fabulism would be a story with a world fabricated specifically for and within the bounds of the story, which Tolkien took to an amazing level by creating his own grammatically salient language, a world clearly not our own. Yeah.
And also, as we were trying to decide what fabulism is, and that's what we're still trying to decide now, could you please turn a story that isn't meant to be a fabulous tale into a fabulous one? That'll help me get my head wrapped around it.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Well, I know we thought about this a lot, and we came up with a pretty good example that I think satisfied your curiosity and my own definition and my need to change the character's viewpoint. So
drum roll, please, and the answer is
Harry Potter.
So can you turn that into a fabulous tale instead of the total fantasy?
I'm sure as heck going to try, Scott. So Harry Potter obviously is not fabulism. It's more fantasy than anything, because even though his world is partially realistic, a large chunk of his narrative is spent in the magical world, and there are many boundaries drawn between the magical world and the openly disdained Muggle world. He's constantly aware of the boundary and constantly in awe of the magic in his world. So Harry Potter doesn't attempt to make the quotidian extraordinary. It doesn't really go into the Muggle world, only how the magical world affects it. So there's that clear divide from Harry's narrative, from Harry's point of view. But maybe if we focused on a character like Arabella Figg, who straddles the magical and the realistic because she's a squib, and I hope I'm not spoiling it for anyone at this point. It's been many years. And you have the narrative focus on the differences and similarities that both draw those worlds together and separate them. Then we might get a sense of fabulism, and that could take place in a number of ways. But I think it would be particularly interesting if Mrs. Figg finds the Muggle world a little more exciting to live in after the magical one she might have been raised in. She might find the Muggle world refreshing and interesting after having struggled to fit into the magical one and just never quite making the cut.
That's helping me wrap my head around it. Now, where do our readers go to read more about fabulous writing?
Oh my, so many places. There's a great journal I found. There's actually many great journals I found. One of my favorites is called Phantom Drift, and it's subtitled A Journal of New Fabulism, which is great. I love journals, although I do work in the library, and I love to read the journals down there. So I hope your listeners are as excited as I am about the journals that I used to pull. And there's countless journals, really. I found one that I can't remember the name of right now, but it's edited by Peter Straub. I do know that. Phantom Drift is just mainly and purely fabulistic. And
we'll update people on the blog for the show about what the one you can't remember is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll research that at the library where we both have our day jobs.
Yes.
And so tell me more. Tell me more, Amber Gallant.
Of course, yeah.
We're still talking about fabulism, and I think I've got my head wrapped around it, but I think we've got a couple more minutes, so I need to hear more.
Yeah, I'd love to talk and actually quote about some blogs and quote from some small presses that I found that are really into fabulism.
Well, okay, the listeners are yours.
Mm-hmm. So this excerpt is from Mary Mackey's blog about the small press, Omnidon, which primarily publishes fabulism. And she defines it as a type of fiction having cultural meaning and artistic value, which means it doesn't really fit well into the escapist formulist genres, yet it also has non-realistic elements and settings which exclude it from the category of literary fiction. They wanted to publish that, but struggled with what to call it. And they eventually decided to use the simpler term fabulous fiction, which they think of as embracing all the kinds of stories that might erase as well as extend the boundaries of non-realistic artistic fiction. And there's a fair bit in here about whether it meets the broad definition of the term literary. They eventually end by recognizing that it doesn't meet the established realist definition of literary fiction. Neither literary nor genre, but it's kind of at the intersection of literary and weird.
Yes, and that's fabulist fiction with that T on the end. T on the end.
Oh, sorry, I'm not enunciating well.
That's quite all right. Because it's fabulous, but we're here to talk about fabulist.
It is fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was what we first talked about. Yeah. Other than that, there are some great places to explore the different potential subsets of fabulism. Not that it's a classified genre so much as a movement of writers. So I've come across some interesting discussions about where to draw the line between embellished journalism and historical fabulism, which interestingly enough, primarily question H.L. Mencken and his stories, some of which he concocted and openly said so and was absolutely proud of doing so. They say in the second volume of his memoir, Newspaper Days, Mencken gleefully confesses to concocting stories at the turn of the century while working as a young city reporter for the Baltimore Herald.
You could get fired for that, by the way.
You could. Don't do it. We're not suggesting that in any way. When the Herald promoted him to the City Hall beat, Mencken and the Americans reporter asked the Sun City Hall guy if he'd like to pool his reporting with them. When the Sun reporter resisted, Mencken and his pal on the American planted fake stories in their papers with the refinements of detail that coincided perfectly because they were obviously planning this on the outside, so that all the city editors in town accepted it as gospel. So Mencken and his pal, they steadily escalated from one fake story a day to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then even more. And they made the Sun editors think that the American and the Herald were consistently beating their reporter, which, of course, beat this poor reporter down and made him join the pool. Somewhere else in Newspaper Days, he brags of publishing a page-one story in the Herald in 1905 about the outcome of a naval battle between Japan and Russia during the Sino-Japanese War, 2 weeks before the authentic results were known. And luckily, he did pick the winner, so that wasn't really found out. There's also domestic fabulism. Which,
really? Domestic fabulism.
Mm-hmm. Not really sure how to describe that other than saying that I imagine it as Betty Draper from Mad Men stumbling across some hidden secret in her upper-class New York neighborhood. But I do want to go back to Electric Lit and Amber Sparks' essay real quick.
We have about a minute for that.
Of course.
So lay it on us.
Yeah, just that essay was, as we said, it said that reality has forgotten its pants. That was its definition. And it talks extensively about domestic fabulism. I can't explain it all in the time we have left, but
that's a good introduction for people's.
I'm so glad, and that is, I think we're almost out of time.
Well, thank you for that fabulous introduction to fabulism.
You're welcome.
I appreciate that, Miss Amber Gallant, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Amber. And there are all kinds of literary genres to explore, and in fact, all of America is exploring many literary genres through the Great American Read that's being sponsored by PPS, and so many genres, and many of them are just sort of bookstore-oriented genres like classic, or what was another one? Science fiction, fan fiction. There's a fan fiction book on the Great American Read list. It's 50 Shades of Grey. We've gone from the divine to the ridiculous, the sublime to the ridiculous somehow, but. Gabriel Pan is here, and there is one particular book on the Great American Read that is a great genre, historical adventure, and we're talking about Alexandre Dumas and the Count of Monte Cristo. It's an 1844 book, and it was originally in French, and most of Dumas' colleagues, they were writing probably more romantic adventure. But, man, he put so much adventure in there.
He was a barn burner. Hey, Scott, how's you going?
I'm doing very well, and I'm very excited that you're willing to read a passage from Alexandre Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. Such a great book, and so many people still love this book.
Oh, exactly. This is one of those things where kids grew up on this stuff. This is the sword and swashbuckler stuff.
Yeah, real adventure.
The Man in the Iron Mask.
In fact, the amazing popularity of this book leads to Alexandre Dumas' fantastic nickname of the Papa of popular fiction. And what are you going to read for us?
I've got one of the chapters here where he has actually been thrown in prison. And
The Count of Monte Cristo, thrown in prison?
He is now in a dungeon on a fortress island and slowly going mad when they describe an inspector coming to visit and talking to him.
Well,
this is chapter 14 called The Two Prisoners from Dumas' The Count of Monte Cristo. A year after Louis XVIII's restoration, a visit was made by the Inspector General of Prisons. Dantes in his cell heard the noise of preparation, sounds that at the depth where he lay would have been inaudible to any but the ear of a prisoner, who could hear the splash of the drop of water that every hour fell from the roof of his dungeon. He guessed something uncommon was passing among the living, but he had so long ceased to have any intercourse with the world that he looked upon himself as dead. The inspector visited, one after another, the cells and dungeons of several of the prisoners, whose good behavior or stupidity recommended them to the clemency of the government. He inquired how they were fed and if they had any requests to make. The universal response was that the fare was detestable and that they wanted to be set free. The inspector asked if they had anything else to ask for. They shook their heads. What could they desire beyond their liberty? The inspector turned smilingly to the government. I do not know what reason government can assign for these useless visits. When you see one prisoner, you see all. Always the same thing, ill-fed and innocent. Are there any others? Yes, the dangerous and mad prisoners are in the dungeons. Let us visit them, said the inspector with an air of fatigue. We must play the farce to the end. Let us see the dungeons. Let us first send for 2 soldiers, said the governor. The prisoners sometimes, through mere uneasiness of life, and in order to be sentenced to death, commit acts of useless violence, and you might fall a victim. Take all needful precautions, replied the inspector. 2 soldiers were accordingly sent for, and the inspector descended the stairway, so foul, so humid, so dark, as to be loathsome to sight, smell, and respiration. Ah! Cried the inspector. Who can live here? A most dangerous conspirator, a man we are ordered to keep the most strict watch over, as he is daring and resolute. He is alone? Certainly. How long has he been here? Nearly a year. Was he placed here when he first arrived? No, not until he attempted to kill the turnkey, who took his food to him. To kill the turnkey? Yes, the very one who is lighting us. Is it not true, Antoine? Asked the governor. True enough. He wanted to kill me, returned the turnkey. He must be mad, said the inspector. He is worse than that. He is the devil, returned the turnkey. Shall I complain of him? Demanded the inspector. Oh, no, it is useless. Besides, he is almost mad now, and in another year he will be quite so. Ah, so much the better for him. He will suffer less, said the inspector. He was, as his remark shows, a man full of philanthropy, and in every way fit for his office. You are right, sir, replied the governor, and this remark proves that you have deeply considered the subject. Now, we have in a dungeon about 20 feet distant, and to which you descend by another stair, an old abbot, formerly leader of a party in Italy, who has been here since 1811, and in 1813 he went mad, and the change is astonishing. He used to weep, now he laughs. He grew thin, now he grows fat. You had better see him, for his madness is amusing. I will see them both, returned the inspector. I must conscientiously perform my duty. This was the inspector's first visit. He wished to display his authority. Let us visit this one first, added he. By all means, replied the governor, and he signed to the turnkey to open the door. At the sound of the key turning in the lock and the creaking of the hinges, Dantes, who was crouched in a corner of the dungeon, whence he could see the ray of light that came through a narrow iron grating above, raised his head. Seeing a stranger escorted by 2 turnkeys, holding torches, and accompanied by 2 soldiers, and to whom the governor spoke bareheaded, Dantes, who guessed the truth, and that moment, to address himself to the superior authorities who was come, sprang forward with clasped hands. The soldiers interposed their bayonets, for they thought he was about to attack the inspector. and the latter recoiled 2 or 3 steps. Dante saw that he was looked upon as dangerous. Then, infusing all the humility he possessed into his eyes and voice, he addressed the inspector and sought to inspire him with pity. The inspector listened attentively. Then, turning to the governor, observed, "He will become religious. He is already more gentle. He is afraid, and retreated before the bayonets. Madmen are not afraid of anything. I made some curious observations on this at Charenton." Then, turning to the prisoner, "What is it you want?" said he. "I want to know what crime I have committed, to be tried, and if I am guilty, to be shot. If innocent, to be set at liberty." "Are you well fed?" said the inspector. I believe so. I don't know. It is of no consequence. What matters, really, not only to me, but to officers of justice and the king, is that an innocent man should languish in prison, the victim of an infamous denunciation, to die here cursing his executioners." "You are very humble today," remarked the governor. "You are not so always. The other day, for instance, when you tried to kill the turnkey." "It is true, sir, and I beg his pardon, for he has always been very good to me. But I was mad." "And you are not so any longer?" "No. Captivity has subdued me. I have been here so long." "So long? When were you arrested then?" asked the inspector. "The 28th of February, 1815, at 2:30 in the afternoon." "Today is the 30th of July, 1816. Why, it is but 17 months. "Only 17 months?" replied Dantes. "Oh, you do not know what 17 months is in prison. 17 ages, rather, especially to a man who, like me, had arrived at the summit of his ambition, to a man who, like me, was on the point of marrying a woman he adored, who saw an honorable career open before him, and who loses all in an instant, who sees his prospects destroyed, and is ignorant of the fate of his affianced wife, and whether his aged father be still living. 17 months' captivity to a sailor, accustomed to the boundless ocean, is a worse punishment than human crime ever merited. Have pity on me, then, and ask for me, not intelligence, but a trial, not a pardon, but a verdict. A trial, sir. I ask only for a trial. That surely cannot be denied to one who is accused." "We shall see," the inspector said, then turning to the governor. "On my word, the poor devil touches me. You must show me the proofs against him." "Certainly, but you will find terrible charges." "Monsieur," continued Dantes, "I know it is not in your power to release me, but you can plead for me. You can have me tried, and that is all I ask. Let me know my crime, and the reason why I was condemned. Uncertainty is worse than all." "Go on with the lights," said the inspector. "Monsieur," cried Dantes, "I can tell by your voice you are touched with pity. Tell me at least a hope." "I cannot tell you that," replied the inspector. "I can only promise to examine your case." "Oh, I am free. Then I am saved." "Who arrested you?" "Monsieur Villefort. See him and hear what he says." "Ah, Monsieur Villefort is no longer at Marseille. He is now at Toulouse." "I am no longer surprised at my detention," murmured Dantes, "since my only protector is removed." "Had Monsieur Villefort any cause of personal dislike to you?" "None. On the contrary, he was very kind to me." "I can then rely on the notes he has left concerning you?" "Entirely." That is well. Wait patiently, then." Dantes fell on his knees and prayed earnestly. The door closed, but this time a fresh inmate was left with Dantes. Hope. The inspector kept his word with Dantes. He examined the register and found the following note concerning him. Edmond Dantes, violent Bonapartist, took an active part in the return from Elba. The greatest watchfulness and care to be exercised. This note was in a different hand from the rest, which showed it had been added since his confinement. The inspector could not contend against this accusation, so he simply wrote, "Nothing to be done." This visit had infused new vigor into Dantes. He had, till then, forgotten the date. But now, with a fragment of plaster, he wrote the date, 30th July, 1816, and made a mark every day in order not to lose his reckoning again. Days and weeks passed away, then months. Dante still waited. He at first expected to be freed in a fortnight. This fortnight expired. He decided that the inspector would do nothing until his return to Paris, and that he would not reach there until his circuit was finished. He therefore fixed 3 months. 3 months passed away, then 6 more. Finally, 10 months and a half had gone by, and no favorable change had taken place. And Dantes began to fancy the inspector's visit but a dream, an illusion of the brain. At the expiration of a year, the governor was transferred. He had obtained charge of the fortress at Ham. He took with him several of his subordinates, and amongst them Dante's jailer. A new governor arrived. It would have been too tedious to acquire the names of the prisoners. He learned their numbers instead. This horrible place contained 50 cells. Their inhabitants were designated by the numbers of their cell, and the unhappy young man was no longer called Edmond Dantes. He was now number 34.
I can see why people still love this book. Mm-hmm. Wow. Brilliant job,
Amazing
Gabriel,
stuff.
too. All those voices. It's a good thing you get paid per voice character.
Oui, but of course, huh?
And Melanie is with us, too. Melanie Peters, who's our favorite French-speaking member of our troupe, and we gave her the all the amazing French words in this one.
Okay, so we're zipping to chapter 70.
Yes, and a happier time for the Count.
Happier time for the Count. This chapter is called The Ball. It was in the warmest days of July when in due course of time the Saturday arrived upon which the ball was to take place at Monsieur de Montserrat. It was 10 o'clock at night. The branches of the great trees in the garden of the Count's house stood out boldly against the azure canopy of heaven, which was studded with golden stars, but where the last fleeting clouds of a vanishing storm yet lingered. From the apartments on the ground floor might be heard the sound of music, with the whirl of the waltz and gallop, while brilliant streams of light shone through the openings of the Venetian blinds. At this moment the garden was only occupied by about 10 servants, who had just received orders from their mistress to prepare the supper, the serenity of the weather continuing to increase. Until now it had been undecided whether the supper should take place in the dining room or under a long tent erected on the lawn, but the beautiful blue sky, studded with stars, had settled the question in favor of the lawn. The gardens were illuminated with colored lanterns, according to the Italian custom, and, as is usual in countries where the luxuries of the table, the rarest of all luxuries in their complete form, are well understood, the supper table was loaded with wax lights and flowers. At the time the Countess of Montserrat returned to the rooms after giving her orders, many guests were arriving, more attracted by the charming hospitality of the Countess than by the distinguished position of the Count. For, owing to the good taste of Mercedes, one was sure of finding some devices at her entertainment worthy of describing, or even copying in case of need. Madame Danglars, in whom the event we have revealed had caused deep anxiety, had hesitated about going to Madame de Montserrat, when during the morning her carriage happened to meet that of Villefort. The latter made a sign, and when the carriages had drawn close together, said, "You are going to Madame de Montserrat's, are you not?" "No," replied Madame Danglars, "I am too ill." "You are wrong," replied Villefort significantly. "It is important that you should be seen there." "Do you think so?" asked the Baroness. "I do." "In that case, I will go." And the 2 carriages passed on towards their different destinations. Madame Danglars therefore came, not only beautiful in person, but radiant with splendor. She entered by one door at the time when Mercedes appeared at the other door. The Countess took Albert to meet Madame Danglars. He approached, paid her some well-merited compliments on her toilette, and offered his arm to conduct her to a seat. Albert looked around him. "You are looking for my daughter," said the Baroness, smiling. "I confess it," replied Albert. "Could you have been so cruel as not to bring her?" "Calm yourself. She has met Mademoiselle de Villefort and has taken her arm. See, they are following us, both in white dresses, one with a bouquet of camellias, the other with one of myosotis. But tell me, well, what do you wish to know?" Will not the Count of Monte Cristo be here tonight? 17, replied Albert. What do you mean? I only mean that the Count seems the rage, replied the Viscount, smiling, and that you are the 17th person that has asked me the same question. The Count is in fashion. I congratulate him upon it. And have you replied to everyone as you have to me? Ah, to be sure, I have not answered you. Be satisfied. We shall have this lion. We are among the privileged ones. Were you at the opera yesterday? No. He was there. Ah, indeed. And did the eccentric person commit any new originality? Can he be seen without doing so? Elsler was dancing in Le Diable Boiteux. The Greek princess was in ecstasies. After the chakucha, he placed a magnificent ring on the stem of a bouquet and threw it to the charming danseuse, who, in the third act, to do honor to the gift, reappeared with it on her finger. And the Greek princess, will she be here? No, you will be deprived of that pleasure. Her position in the Count's establishment is not sufficiently understood. Wait, leave me here, and go and speak to Madame de Villefort, who is trying to attract your attention. Albert bowed to Madame Danglars and advanced towards Madame de Villefort, whose lips opened as he approached. I wager anything, said Albert, interrupting her, that I know what you are about to say. Well, what is it? If I guess rightly, will you confess it? Yes. On your honor. On my honor. You are going to ask me if the Count of Monte Cristo had arrived or was expected. Not at all. It is not of him that I am now thinking. I was going to ask if you had received any news of Monsieur France. Yes, yesterday. What did he tell you? That he was leaving at the same time as his letter. Well, now then, the Count? The Count will come, of that you may be satisfied. You know that he has another name beside Monte Cristo. No, I did not know it. Monte Cristo is the name of an island, and he has a family name. I never heard it. Well, then, I am better informed than you. His name is Zaccone. Is it possible? He is a Maltese. That is also possible. The son of a ship owner. Really, you should relate all this aloud. You should have the greatest success. He served in India, discovered a mine in Thessaly, and comes to Paris to establish a mineral water cure at Auteuil. Well, I'm sure, said Monsieur. This is indeed news. Am I allowed to repeat it? Yes, but cautiously. Tell one thing at a time, and do not say, I told you so. Why so? Because it is a secret just discovered. By whom? The police. Then the news originated at the prefect's last night. Paris, you can understand, is astonished at the sight of such unusual splendor, and the police have made inquiries. Well, well, nothing more is wanting than to arrest the Count as a vagabond, and the pretext of his being too rich. Indeed, that doubtless would have happened if his credentials had not been so favorable. Poor Count! And is he aware of the danger he has been in? I think not. Then it will be but charitable to inform him. When he arrives, I will not fail to do so. Just then a handsome young man with bright eyes, black hair, and glossy moustache respectfully bowed to Madame de Villefort. Albert extended his hand. Madame, said Albert, allow me to present to you Monsieur Maximilien Morel, captain of Spahis, one of our best, and above all, our bravest officers. I have already had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman at Auteuil, at the house of the Count of Monte Cristo, replied Madame de Villefort, turning away with a marked coldness of manner. This answer, and especially the tone in which it was uttered, chilled the heart of poor Morel, but a recompense was in store for him. Turning around, he saw near the door a beautiful fair face, whose large blue eyes were, without any marked expression, fixed upon him, while the bouquet of myosotis was gently raised to her lips. The salutation was well understood that Morel, with the same expression in his eyes, placed his handkerchief to his mouth, and these two living statues, whose hearts beat so violently under their marble aspect, separated from each other by the whole length of the room, forgot themselves for a moment, or rather forgot the world in their mutual contemplation. They might have remained much longer lost in one another without anyone noticing their abstraction. The Count of Monte Cristo had just entered. We have already said that there was something in the Count which attracted universal attention wherever he appeared. It was not the coat, unexceptional in its cut, though simple and unornamented. It was not the plain white waistcoat. It was not the trousers that displayed the foot so perfectly formed. It was none of these things that attracted the attention. It was his pale complexion, his waving black hair, his calm and serene expression, his dark and melancholy eye, his mouth chiseled with such marvelous delicacy, which so easily expressed such high disdain. These were what fixed the attention of all upon him. Many men might have been handsomer, but certainly there could be none whose appearance was more significant, if the expression may be used. Everything about the Count seemed to have its meaning, for the constant habit of thought which he had acquired had given an ease and vigor to the expression of his face, and even to the most trifling gesture, scarcely to be understood. Yet the Parisian world is so strange that even all this might not have won attention had there not been connected with it a mysterious story, gilded by an immense fortune.
He didn't even need to say anything. Man, what a character. Thank you, Melanie Peters, for reading that chapter from Alexandre Dumas, The Count of Monte Cristo. And now on to a living author. We've got a living author in the house. And she's here with us. Lily Huang is here. And her genre for now is merely microfiction, and we're going to talk more about other aspects of it later. But Lily, what story are you going to read for us? A story of yours.
Hello, everyone. I'm Lily Huang. I'll be reading Yuepu and the Stars today.
Thank you. And it's your story. Thank you.
Yes, it's my story. It's my original fiction.
We'd love to hear it now. Bravo.
All right. Milady, please come back inside, called a tiny voice. The stars are beautiful tonight, aren't they, Yuepu?
Yes, milady, but back inside we go. Instead,
insisted Yuepu, as the exasperated loud clacking of a sandal echoed down the garden path. All I see are stars. Bright and clear they surround me. Though, how far are you? I asked myself, following Yuepu.
Your father, Sukuyu, wishes that you spend more time writing poetry than shooting stars in the sky, as you please, Changlia.
Yuepu lectured, standing in front of me as I draw at the ready draw back my bow string. Yuepu, move over some. Last shot, I promise. And back to musing poems. My painting is almost complete. Shing!
You already graffitied the sky with all these gaseous stars. How much more space is there for you to keep painting?
Yuepu, don't get it. You don't get it. Art is art. When an artist feels inspired, one must...
Not what I'm saying, my lady. What is today's musings?
Immortality versus mortality, Yuepu. I'll live forever, but my stars will not. What is it that I can do for them?
Milady, you cannot stop their essence from moving away. You must watch over them, yes, but cannot stop their path.
Yuepu, why does Father keep everything in the dark? That's stopping the lightning, isn't it?
Aye, it is. His sous chef doesn't quite agree to flashy displays.
Yuepu, my fragile, brave stars will shine even brighter. The end.
I loved that story, Lily. Lily originally read that story at the UC San Diego Library when we hosted one of our short tales from the mothership.
Yes.
And I was so charmed by that story and the characters that Lily and I had a chance to turn it into a paper theater play.
Yes,
even.
we did.
We added some extra characters, and your sister, who's in the room, even helped with some of the drawings that we
Yes, she
turned into
did.
paper
She's
dolls.
a great artist.
Yes, she is. She's too shy to be on the radio today, but but we'll another time before she leaves this summer, we'll have her on. We'll have her speak. We'll make her.
Yes.
Now, you and I were talking about your story and trying to decide what other genre it is besides microfiction, and you had some ideas as you were writing it. You had some intentions, in fact.
Yes, actually, so for this story, it's about the moon and the stars. From my Chinese culture, we have something called the Mid-Autumn Festival, which we celebrate the moon and how beautiful it is. It's usually on the August 15th on the lunar calendar.
I see.
It's also called Mooncake Day because we have this delicious little pastry we just eat at this time
That's why I
period.
get mooncakes that time of year.
Yeah, it's usually around September, October time.
Well, that's a great way to celebrate.
Yeah.
Yum. And so this was just when you read it too that night, it felt to me very sort of anime, even almost, just because your characters are so interesting, and the drawings that your sister ended up making were also in that anime vein that I just enjoyed so much.
Yeah.
Your sister Lisa, she was nameless recently in this broadcast, but your sister Lisa is here, so delightful, and Lisa Huang. Now, Lily, we really must take one of your stories and turn them into a radio play.
That would be a lovely idea, actually.
And then we'll make Lisa read one of the roles.
That would
Lisa,
be
no one's
fun.
going to even know it's you. They won't be able to see you.
Would you like to step up to the mic, dear sister?
She should just say hello to your family.
Sure. Hello.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
That's her premiere on the radio, which is wonderful. But you'll do more when we turn one of Lily Huang's stories into a radio drama. Do you want to do a brand new one, or is there one from your one that I'm familiar with? I'm familiar with at least 4 of your stories. Do you think one of those would lend themselves well to a radio drama?
I did one recently in late May for our mothership, Short Tales. It was
Yes.
about a science fiction story.
Yes, it was a
Yeah.
true science fiction one, and
Yeah.
there was a delightfully gruff character in
Yes.
it that Gabriel Pan would play very well.
Yes.
So I already know who Gabe's going to play in that show. Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of room for sound effects in that one too.
Yes,
which
yes,
would be
yeah.
delightful. So, you should come back again this summer to read perhaps one of your other mothership stories. But maybe we could write something before your sister leaves town,
Yeah.
so that she can be in she's here for about a month, right? So,
Yeah.
And so Lisa, we'll give you an easy role, I promise. Promise. Who could she be in that story, do you think? We should create a new character for her?
I would probably have to expand it. For microfiction, we're writing 250 words.
Yes,
So
and that's not your fault.
Yeah.
That was the rule.
yeah, that is the rule. So I'm hoping to expand it a little longer.
Of course.
Yeah. So probably a new character for
Yeah,
her.
excellent. Maybe she can help pick it too.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll write it to your strengths,
Yeah.
Lisa. That's what your sister will do for you. We'll write it to your true strengths. Well, we've got a minute and a half left. Do you have any other writing plans this summer?
I'm working on some poetry, and I'm really inspired by Chinese and Japanese mythology in particular. So probably like a retelling of one of those stories.
Very good. Is there one you have in mind? Have you whittled it down a bit?
For the Yuepu and the Shooting Stars one, I was thinking about expanding it to maybe perhaps like a novel. So maybe this one I'll work on it some more.
Oh, wow.
Actually, yeah.
That's what's great about microfiction too, is that it's just 250 words, so that's when you're done. Of course, if you're on a deadline, that's it. You're done. It's 250 words
Yeah.
long. But sometimes that story can become the perfect elevator speech for a larger
definitely.
work.
It's a good pitch. Yeah.
So, Lisa, you'll spend some time trying to decide what your strengths are, and we'll create a character just for you.
Yes.
In that story, and we'll be back. Let's see. We're always here the 2nd and 4th Thursday of the month. That doesn't mean every other Thursday. Always the 2nd, 4th Thursday of the month. So you can check your calendars at 8 p.m. And we're always live. This was a live and lively broadcast. And before the summer is over, Lily Huang will be back with maybe at least part of a radio play. That's for
Hopefully,
sure.
yes.
Because it doesn't have to be complete. And I look forward to that, Lily, very much so. Oh, I hear music. That means we get to go home.
Thank you for having me here today.
My pleasure to have you here, Lily, as well as your sister, Lisa. Thank you. And thank you to Gabriel Pan, Amber Gallant, Melanie Peters. Good night, everybody.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Looking to be a successful entrepreneur? The virtual assistant industry continues to be a top choice for those looking to start their own business. The problem can be how to become a virtual assistant. Many turn to the Bible of the VA industry, the book Virtual Assistant the Series, and it's the perfect guide for office managers, executive assistants, and other administrative professionals looking to make the transition from employee to successful business owner. Go to vatheseries.com to get your copy today.
I've been bragging about Progressive Medical Center to you guys for years, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Agoli with us because, Dr. Agoli, a lot of people walk through your doors, and some of their biggest problems are they're just fatigued, they're tired all the time, and even though they're dieting and exercising, they cannot get the weight off. Why is that?
It's a combination of poor metabolism, inappropriate eating, but more importantly, it's due to a lack of education and really doing the right testing. A lot of our patients are metabolically compromised. What does that mean? Their metabolism is not functioning. The metabolism is responsible for all physical and chemical processes necessary to sustain life, and that includes energy. And without cellular energy, your body is not going to be a burning machine. Let's get back and teach our listeners to be a fat-burning machine.
It's been a lot easier to maintain my weight since Progressive Medical Center started treating me with all-natural supplements, learning proper nutrition, and that can be you today. No more frustrations about being tired or overweight. So why don't you get a hold of Progressive Medical Center today through progressivemedicalcenter.com.
This is your life, live it well.
Successful cyber attacks have increased 46% in the last 4 years. Cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. Arm and protect yourself with information from Securing Our eCity Foundation. They're a nonprofit offering free seminars and online resources to help us, our businesses, and community to live and work in a safer cyber world. Contact Securing Our eCity Foundation at securingourecity.org or call 619-630-2444. Too much to do? Not enough time to get it done? Call on the experts at Another 8 Hours for your business support needs. By partnering with Another 8 Hours, we allow you to focus on the more important matters, like being in front of your clients, doing what you do best, rather than being stuck at a desk poring over paperwork, rummaging through emails, returning phone calls, and struggling to get everything done by yourself. Meanwhile, your family and social life are going down the drain. Go to another8hours.com or call 8 More Hours. That's 866-734-6877.
This is Bill Gruber with BizVid Communications, a Southern California video production leader. We've been honored to sponsor, produce, write, and host many of the fine programs on WS Radio over the years. So we understand how important the internet and your website exposure are. As video producers, we know the tricks and secrets to incorporate video to increase your search engine optimization and business success. Visit bizvidcommunications.com to see what we can do for you. BIZVID communications.com.